is Underdog Portfolio Weekly, hosted by Scott.
We are back. This is BBM 5 Live Draft 8.0 here with JJ Zachariason at Late Round QB. Draft is just filling right now. Looks like we still need 7 more. JJ, I hope you need 7 more on yours.
I need 7 more. I was now 6. Now 5. Yeah, it's starting to fill. I think we're in the same one. Yeah.
All right. I gave the crew a 30-second head start if anybody in here wants to jump in, but usually it fills right away. So you got a couple seconds if you still want to jump in. But let's just get started. I'll share the board here in a second once it fills. But, man, I'm glad to have you on. You have been taking on this best ball bro mentality this year with Underdog, and you've even done more drafts than me. I'm thinking of about 300. You said you're a little bit more than that. So just talk a little bit about your experience thus far.
Yeah, man, it's been good. This is 65 or 66, I think, for Best Ball Mania for me. I like doing live a little bit more than slow, or fast more than slow at this point. Just, I think, we talked about it a little bit to start. Oh man, looks like we're back to back, man.
You were at the man. All right, so you're at the 2 and I'm at the 3. All right, yeah. Let's go.
This will be fun. But yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. We were talking a little bit beforehand how you can get into slow draft hell pretty easily whenever you're, playing a lot of volume. I'm trying my best now that we're in like mid-July and we're going to be into August to really just do as many fast drafts as I can whenever there's some downtime and stuff, So that's where I'm at now. I'm trying to get all my BBMs to be fast moving forward.
Yeah, I've had to enter some slows just to make sure that we get in and get them done. But yeah, I've tried to do as many fast drafts as I can just to try to talk about the reason why. And we'll get started here. I know we're picking back to back after we make our first 2 picks, which really shouldn't be too dramatic. We'll talk a little bit about why you prefer the fast versus the slow. Any strategy picking early on? I've been pretty much like just kind of taking even exposure of all the players that kind of go around each pick. So I'll take a Jefferson and Amon-Ra, Chase and Tyreek. But I think my exposures are probably somewhere between like 8 and 12% of pretty much like every first round pick. You know what I mean?
That's how I am too. I'm honestly kind of like that in the second as well. To a decent extent. But it's definitely more so in the first. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the market is like relatively efficient in the first anyway. Like if it wasn't, then I'd feel differently. But I think that the way things are ranked and the way things look, it's logical to me. I think that there might be times I could foresee myself in August, maybe if I'm looking at some of my builds, looking at the portfolio, of maybe like the running backs shift, maybe even upward a little bit potentially with Breece and Bijan. And we see that sometimes in drafts. Like sometimes they'll go in like the 4 to 6 range as opposed to like the 6 to 8 range. But, I just think that the first round is pretty efficient overall. So wherever I'm at, the only thing that I will say that I'll change is if it's like with Best Ball Mania, starts in May, ends in August, ADP is going to shift and fluctuate throughout that time frame. Whereas if this is like a 2-week tournament or a 1-week tournament where we know it's going to fill, I might get a little cute in the first 2 rounds just to differentiate my lineup a little bit and get combos that might not be, frequent elsewhere within that tournament.
So what's the theory on wanting to do the lives? Is it trying to catch things in real time in terms of other drafters' mistakes, just more wild west in the lives? I mean, what's your theory? Because I've heard both. I've heard both sides.
Yeah, honestly, it's more. I'm not even really that concerned about that. Although I think there might be something to that. It's more so like I pay hyper attention to that specific lineup, that specific draft while I'm doing it live, as opposed to slow. When it's slow, if I'm in 100 drafts, slow drafts, I'm just kind of trying to get through all the drafts where I'm on the clock. And I'm not necessarily thinking as deeply about like what my next move is going to be. And I'm not reading the board nearly as well. And so I just think my teams end up looking better and feeling better. And there's better correlation whenever I'm thinking on the fly. And on top of that, like, I do think I have an edge just based on doing them more than probably a lot of others or a good number of others. Like, thinking on the fly of like correlation and how I can stack, certain offenses, and looking at week 17 and thinking on the fly of like, oh yeah, Indianapolis gets the Giants. I'm going to get, Jonathan Taylor with Malik Neighbors and like immediately thinking about that. Whereas others might be checking sheets, while that's going on, and the 30 seconds might not be enough for them.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Sometimes I'll be in the live draft and I'll look at how team is building, and it's hard to. That's the only negative about a live draft is it's hard to see what everybody else is doing. You know what I mean? Unless you are really diligent about looking at your phone, it's hard to see exactly what everybody else is doing. Whereas a slow, you can kind of look at the teams that are before and after you, see their builds, see, can I wait on tight end or wait on quarterback, etc. But it's interesting. You'll think a team they're just cruising along, right? Like their first 3 or 4 picks look good. And then, the team with Marvin Harrison will take a below ADP, like CJ Stroud, you're just like, just random. And you're like, all right, I thought this person was going to be tough competition. And then boom, like right away they go rogue. And then they end up with the team that's just random, haphazard, etc. I'll give a shout out. We have Dr. B Harris in the crowd. He is in the draft. He is in the 9-hole, started AJ Brown and Nico Collins. So let's see. I started with Justin Jefferson. All right. We are going to lock in Devon Achane at the 210 spot. And JJ follows with Saquon. So leaves JJ the correlation right there. Have you gotten many CD, Saquon, Devontae Smith starts, which I assume is that what you're going for?
Yeah. But only recently, Saquon's been falling a little bit. Like, I think this is the pocket of time that I'm going to attack Saquon and get my Saquon exposure. Cause you taking Achane, I think is sharp. And I totally understand that. And I have more Achane than Saquon. It's just that with this sort of decreased ADP, I wouldn't be surprised if August hits, we get some more casual drafters. They're like, why are these running backs going where they're going? I'm going to take them earlier. And then Saquon's ADP rises again, back to like the mid second into early second. So I'm just trying to get a little bit of exposure there. And again, I understand I'm just going to go with Devontae then here. I understand the downside and like the risk with Saquon. Obviously you have Jalen Hurts and the tush push. You have a quarterback who hasn't really hyper targeted his running backs out of the backfield. But I also think like if you take a step back too, there's some variance in the way that this could go down with Philadelphia's offense this year, where Kellen Moore's there, Jason Kelsey's gone. What if that was a key part to the tush push? Like there's just things that could sort of sway in Barkley's favor a little bit more than what the market might think. Now, I say that only as Saquon as a late second rounder. When you have a different opportunity cost with some of the better wide receivers, I'm not as inclined to go after him.
I do think as we get closer to the season, you are going to probably see these running backs that are going like right after Saquon, and in that range, I do wonder if there becomes kind of a separation of those names and some of the other kind of dead zone running backs, meaning like we're going to probably rip off, other than Derrick Henry, and maybe someone reaches on like a Travis Etienne or something, we're going to rip off like 15 out of 17 picks are going to be receivers, or maybe a random tight end in here.
Yeah.
Like it's truly, this is where in years past, you would have seen some running backs going in here, right?
Right.
This is almost like the dead zone has been vacated, and it's just, we have to get these receivers, because the receivers, once you get to, I think it's probably like wide receiver 45, but you could probably sell me just looking at historical WAR. It's probably before wide receiver 45. The difference between, I don't know, I won't even say Jordan Addison, but let's just say the difference between Christian Watson and Cortland Sutton probably isn't that different from a best ball perspective, yet they go 2 rounds apart, where they did at a time. And now there's that group of receivers is starting to blend together a little bit more, which I found interesting, because before some of the early drafts, I took 6 straight receivers, but you had to take them all. You had to get Keon Coleman, Christian. You had to get those guys in like round 6, early round 7. Now you'll see 1 or 2 of those fall, and you go, wow, someone just took Curtis Samuel over Keon Coleman. Rashid Shaheed over Keon Coleman. Like, so, all right. So I went Jefferson, Achane, Metcalf, some week 16 correlation. I wanted to do a Jefferson team. I've done 6 drafts already today, and I've wanted to do a Jefferson team. This is the first one, so that's why I chose to do it here. Some week 16 correlation, and the beauty of it, Seattle, Minnesota, Chicago, Green Bay, and Cleveland, a ton of options still on the board. Like basically all the players from those teams are still on the board, which makes it nice. Do you use any companion tools or anything, JJ? Do you have any of those that kind of guide you on correlation and stuff like that?
I don't. I just got a sheet that I stare at and just look at matchups and stuff. I mean, I have week 17 memorized, obviously, and then I can kind of pick apart and like remember some of the opponents for week 15, 16. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a companion. I know that it would be helpful, but I'm kind of, would this be considered raw dogging it for
Yes.
BPM going
100%.
without the companion?
100%, man. I have Eric Beimfleur coming on next week. So we're going to talk through, Spike Week, and I've used Spike Week. It's been a lifesaver, especially I've tried to, I don't know if you did you do any of those 10-second drafts?
Oh yeah. I did a lot of them.
Trying to use the companion tool with those, it's like by time Spike Week's a great tool, but it delays on your browser for like 2 or 3 seconds for everything to sync.
Yeah.
So then by time you're trying to use that in the 10-second draft, it's like that's my only real true experience of having to quote unquote raw dog it. But it's been a very, very interesting thing because it really does help you stay organized, and it's customizable. Like when I first downloaded it, it was like, what am I supposed to do with this? But the more you play with it, you can turn stuff on, you can turn stuff off, you can color code everything. It's been really nice. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure I would like be in love, and it would save my.
Oh, dude. Once you use it, you'd be like, I don't want to draft on my phone when I'm laying on the couch anymore because it's not the same. But
right.
The
one interesting thing that I found this year in doing the amount of drafts I've done, I found that like I thought my exposure was going to be pretty out of whack. In me like just having like a lot of 30% plus guys because I would have, but it just hasn't. It's been pretty leveled out. Damn, someone just took Jalen. It's been pretty evened out and leveled out, and I was surprised by that. Maybe it's just because I'm a coward, but it's just I don't have many players that are like even over the 20% mark. Dang, and there goes Christian Kirk. Should I get weird with it here, man? Do I get weird with it?
I did not have any clue what I was going to do with that pick. I just took a low exposure guy. So let's see it.
I'm going to get weird. This will be fun. I'm going to get weird.
All right. I think you'll be able to pull it off.
Yeah, you think I can pull it off? I always go this direction. I always go with the Andrews, the Andrews pick first because people will take the standalone tight end more frequently.
Yep.
It's like my theory with Lamar Jackson's ADP being above Mark Andrews is that it's because of Zay Flowers, right? Because it sometimes gets weighed by Zay and people forcing it with Zay and that stack at the beginning of the 4th round. Whereas if you get him in the late, then oftentimes people kind of like let him go. And if you get Andrews, then people are even less likely to go after him. But we'll see. We'll see if
I thought this guy was going to auto because he went down to the clock. And I'm like, if he autos, JJ's in trouble because that would take Lamar off. But then he went Keenan Allen. So I have no clue.
I mean, like, and typically, like the build that I have right now, it's like, yeah, you'll get Dak or whatever, but it's at least a little bit of a way to differentiate if it does happen here. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, he sniped me. All right.
And like, look, this build, I don't love only having 2 wide receivers through 5. You know what I mean? But I'll just have to pound it and go crazy at wide out, and I won't be getting Dak more than likely with Lamar there. But I do think it's at least like a way to differentiate, the CD look, because I would imagine, obviously most people who get CD, they're just stacking with Dak and kind of going from there, and they're not forcing it with like a Lamar Andrews stack like that.
So speaking of that, I think the reason why you're okay is, and this is something that I've kind of tested out, is I have tried, believe it or not, I've pulled off probably 4 teams in the last couple weeks where I've ended up with 5 different trio stacks or trio correlation games. Yeah. Meaning like I have at least 3 pieces of 5 different games.
Yep.
And when I get CD, Saquon, Devontae Smith, I have zero pressure to have to get Jake Ferguson or some people will go, you have a receiver and a running back from one team. If you're not going to stack CD with Dak, then get another weapon on the team. You know what I mean? And I think with 3, you're already heavily invested in that game to where especially it's going to make or break. So how many, you have to look at it as how many teams have you gotten CD, Saquon, Devontae Smith? If it's probably 3 or 4, you probably don't have a Lamar Andrews with those other 3.
Exactly.
So that's the theory of like, you don't need more Eagles Cowboys exposure unless it's something late that just separates you from the pack. You know, you take a random Jalen Brooks or something like that. But, you know, I don't even know if you'd do that without the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I'm given the equity spent on those players, you know, they're hypothetically big players in that game. And then so if that game blows up, I know I'm getting good exposure and healthy exposure to that game. And so, yeah, I mean, like if Dak falls 3 rounds past ADP, sure, but I'm not going to have to force the issue, you know,
right,
with having the Lamar Andrews stack or force it with a Ferguson, you know?
Yep. Yeah. And it's nice because you don't have any pressure to get any Texans exposure. Let me ask you theory perspective. Would you tack on a round 18 Texans receiver to a team like this? Would you throw a Noah Brown as your 8th receiver just in the wild case that you're the Lamar Andrews owner that is the one that has Noah Brown, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done it for sure. I think I do that a little bit more if I, you know, got like a cheaper Stroud. I'm not like going crazy with Stroud, but like got like a cheaper Stroud with one of the big 3 in Houston, and maybe missed out on like Dalton Schultz, who again, I'm not really drafting that much Schultz either, but like, you know, missed out on that. And I'm like, all right, I got to at least get one more piece to this on a bring back. I mean, it's possible, you know, it's more so how do I feel about that roster? Because I think there's some round 17, round 18 wide receivers that have like a decent projection to give you some usable weeks, whereas Noah Brown could be a 0 pretty easily. You know, like that could be a nothing burger. But I'm open to it.
I don't think I would do it only because, like, for instance, I would rather have Nelson Aguilar.
Right.
Because the chances that you get him to hit your lineup maybe twice during the season. I mean,
you get it.
Nelson Aguilar's nothing, but he's probably going to have 40 catches for 500 yards, and it's going to be gross, and you're going to wish he wasn't playing, but he is. I mean, that will give you more bang for your buck with Lamar than tacking on a bring back, which just
it's really easy to get sucked into the week 17 bringbacks and not think about you know, the fact that you're using that team and that team stack for the first 16 weeks of the season.
Yes. Ooh, all right. Can I get greedy here? All right. So I'm kind of working on a Jefferson Achane, no correlation, correlating Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. And then I do have some correlation in week 16, but I'm going to roll with Brian Thomas. Give me another Jags Titans player.
I think I'm going to go
you're starting fresh, bro. You got the Baltimore stack, and then you're exposed to Philly, Dallas. What you doing?
I'm going to go Deontay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they get Dallas week 15. You get a little bit of that. And I also, it was sort of an archetype pick as well, with him being my 3, going with a less volatile asset in my, you know, like a guy who's probably locked in for a pretty strong target share. You know, maybe the ceiling's not as great, but you know, that's at least there. I might end up pissing you off with my next pick, depending on what happens here.
We will see. I have 2 players in my queue, and one of them is not Jordan Addison, who is at the top of the ADP.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not going after Addison right now. I haven't really been like super high on Addison this draft season, regardless. But now it's like I'm pretty nervous. Oh, there's the JSN pick. That's what I was.
Yeah, I was thinking JSN too. I mean, we'll talk about Addison here in a second after you make. I think I
have to end up forcing this wide receiver pick and just get a body. Good Lord, there's no correlation here either, but I'm just gonna do it.
Get a body.
I just need a human being who's playing wide receiver right now.
I'm gonna rip the Addison pick only because I have Jefferson, only because I can build out some correlation there. Listening to Jordan McNamara on Addison, he used to be a prosecutor, and he's talked about legal stuff many times. He doesn't, you know, put it out there except for when he does his random, you know, quick hit videos and stuff. But he's under the impression that he doesn't think a suspension would happen in 2024 unless they move very quickly with this. Now, it could, but I've seen Addison falling, you know, another round past this. You know what I mean? It makes no sense when you're taking you're down to the Jacoby Myers and Romeo Dobbs at where he's going. You know what I mean? I'm just taking him. I'm going to bank that he's not going to fall.
Well, also where we just were, like after JSN went, you could even argue even a little bit before, like we're in a relatively dead spot the way that the draft unfolded, and it's like I took freaking Keon Coleman there when he usually, like, you can get him in the late 7th at this point pretty frequently, but just kind of the way the draft ended up unfolding. And then anytime you go in the direction that I did early on, pivoting from wide receiver the way that I did, you hope that others kind of pivot from wide receiver too, so that some of the wide receivers end up falling, and then they didn't. And so now my 3 is Deontay Johnson and Keon Coleman's my 4. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we're benefiting from this team, and shout out to Spencer, Spence 23. He's in the 12 spot. So I'll look at the teams with people that are drafting with us. But shout out to this team in the draft. Kachow, I've seen him in there before, but he went with the Richardson, Kyler, and Jonathan Taylor, Trey McBride. So did us a little bit of a favor by prioritizing the second quarterback, I think. But
the 2 wideouts through 7 is bold, man.
Yeah. And early. Not something I've probably done, not much, is an early tight end, an early running back, and 2 early quarterbacks in the first 7 rounds. It just feels like you're going to have to go 9 or 10 receivers to make up, and I don't want to do that. So. What I
did in this draft is the furthest that I will go without wideouts, with like the early Saquon, the quarterback tight end stack. I mean, this could realistically, depending on how things unfold, this could be a 9 wideout team for me. I mean, pretty easily.
See what Spence is doing over here. He went Drake London, Marvin Harrison, and then he went Tank Dell, Sam Laporta, Joe Mixon, went in on Houston, Adunze, Jamison Williams, DeAndre Swift. So he's building a couple teams out. Dr. B. Harris, A.J. Brown, Nico, Henry, Amari, Etienne, DeAndre Hopkins, and C.J. Stroud. Got C.J. Stroud with Nico and Derrick Henry. That's nice. Getting C.J. Stroud at pick 80. Good value for that. We had a question in here real quick. Let's see if you got this on the top of your mind. What is a realistic expectation for Garrett Wilson this year, JJ? You believe in the Garrett Wilson could just absolutely go ham?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can understand on the range of outcomes. My fear, there's like some market trend fears. I do like my draft guide every year, and I look at ADP trends and historic ADP trends. And I know there's a reason for this, but wide receiver ones, top 12 wide receivers who had poor points per game and peripheral numbers the previous season, and I say peripherals like yards per route run, they tend to underperform versus the guys who didn't. Now, the 2 guys that really stand out this year with that kind of statistic is Drake London and Garrett Wilson, but both of them, I think we understand why that would be the case. I don't want to blindly follow trends like that, but it's quarterback driven. They're getting quarterback upgrades this year. That's why they're being drafted where they're being drafted. So I get it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Garrett Wilson is someone that maybe rises above at least like a Puka in camp and into August, mostly because we see a healthy Aaron Rodgers. We see the connection, and Garrett Wilson's talented. So, I think that if you're going to get Wilson, you probably should get him now, because I think the arrow probably only goes up. It won't go up dramatically, but I doubt that it would drop.
All right. Well, I am up. Would have taken Aaron Jones. I did not really want 3 Vikings, but, I would have taken him if he would have fallen to me. I'm in a little bit of a conundrum here because I want to take a tight end, but because I'm built so heavy on the Jags, I'm going to reach a little bit and take Tony Pollard, only because I'm pretty confident either Bowers or Njoku will come back to me, because I don't know how JJ can pass up that Jake Ferguson if he comes back to you.
It's hard right now because I don't even like feel that strong about.
I mean, the team on the end has no attachment to Ferguson, but you just never know. You know what I mean? Like, you never know if they're like, I might go
a little bully here.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
We do it. Jake Ferguson. Okay.
I mean, it's like this. I loved my first 5 rounds from a differentiation standpoint, and nothing has really fallen my way since then. It's just been one of those drafts where it's like just a dead area for the most part since. But yeah, the other option, like I don't mind. I've been drafting some of these, this is like the prime spot to get running backs after you go with a lot of wideouts. And I'm probably just going to have to force one of them, even if there's not much correlation going on.
Jordan Love went to what do you think about taking that was a smart pick. He already had Jaden Reed, went Jordan Love, Romeo Dobbs. What do you think about a team like mine? And I'll let you pick, then I'll ask you the question.
Yeah. I want to go with James Conner. Do I love it? No.
That is unsexy as it gets, right?
Yeah. Is there a playoff matchup with Carolina? Yeah.
See, this is where I struggle. I should take Brock Bowers. I like Brock Bowers better than I like David Njoku. But because I'm already in on HN and I have tons of Jerry Jeudy, I really don't want to take Jerome Ford, Nick Chubb, just because I just have no clue how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
I went with Njoku, but I probably regret it a little bit. But I was going to ask you, what do you think about the strategy of if you have Jefferson and Addison, and a guy like Jordan Love falls past his ADP, just taking Jordan Love.
Yeah.
And that's your correlation. There's no stacking. Because there's really not anything to stack with Jordan Love if you don't get Wicks or Musgrave. You gotta get one of those, but that's it.
If I do that, I'm forcing it with one of those, at least one of those two moving forward, by a round. You know what I mean? Just to get something there. And then if I can't get that, because that kind of happened to me in my live stream today. I was working with a Green Bay stack. Maybe it wasn't a live stream, it was just a regular draft, but I was working with a Green Bay stack, and for some reason, all those guys were going around ahead of ADP, and I'm just getting sniped after snipe. And I had Jaden Reed, and it's not like I'm not getting a ton of Reed, but I had Reed, and the only other option for me with Love was to get Tucker Kraft in the last round. So I just ended up getting Tucker Kraft as all right, well, let's see what happens. Maybe Musgrave gets hurt. Maybe, we saw Kraft as the one last year running a lot of routes. But I think it's viable, though, with Love. The one thing that happened to me earlier today, I'd be interested to hear how you feel about this. This happened on my live stream where I was going Jacksonville. Tennessee is the stack that I just keep going after because it's just easy. And it's easy.
What do you think I'm building right now? Just loading. There's 7 of them you can take,
Right.
Anyway,
so I just keep going after them. It's so easy. But I went so heavy. I had Kirk, Brian Thomas, and Evan Ingram, right, through the first 8 rounds or whatever. And I got so nervous about not getting Trevor Lawrence because the difference between having 1 or maybe 2 guys in an offense and missing out on the quarterback versus 3, it's so massive because you have that strong investment in that team that if you miss out on that quarterback, then you don't have as many outs and possible outs to get other stacks with other quarterbacks, if that makes sense, right? And so I ended up reaching, and we all made fun. I made fun of myself, and everyone in the chat was making fun of me because I reached for by a round, a little over a round for Trevor Lawrence when no one else in the draft had Jags that they would. But we've seen
that's what I was going to get you on, JJ. We've all done it, man. The theory should be nobody else should want T-Law, right? But then all it takes is one time where somebody turns off their phone and just autos out.
Exactly.
And it's they have Lamar, Kyler, and they have to stack that T-Law on there.
Exactly, dude.
Pisses you off.
Exactly. And that's why I'm because if I missed out on T-Law with those 3 Jags, right, all of a sudden my team is so heavily invested in Jacksonville, I don't have their quarterback. There are only so many slots for a late round quarterback / some sort of stack that I can develop later on. And all of the other options that I had on my team were largely players who had quarterbacks that got drafted early that I wouldn't be able to stack them with. And so to me, it was look, I'll take the hit a little bit from an ADP perspective. And then obviously Tajay Spears, I missed him by a pick coming back around, of course. But to me, I didn't want to get screwed. There are too many wild cards in these drafts that I'd rather play it safe in that scenario. If I only had 1 of the guys or 2, if I only had Jaden Reed and I'm going after Jordan Love, I'm not going to force it. It's not that big of a deal if I miss out on that, but there's a big cost if I miss out on the Trevor Lawrence pick.
100%. Yeah, that's just one of those discipline things that you got to draft enough to really have that situation happen to you where
Yeah.
It is just I was in a draft today earlier. I posted on Twitter where somebody took 4 straight quarterbacks, and it was kind of, I think, a tank job, but then they ended up actually drafting a structured team. So it was weird.
Right.
But another one, you just get caught with the team that, I've had it where my connection goes out for a couple picks, or you know what I mean? And they just get caught autoing, and what should fall doesn't fall. So,
yep.
All right, let's see. I'm up in 1. Now this is man. So the teams after me, both teams after me have quarterbacks, including you. I assume you are not taking a Trevor Lawrence in this draft.
I'm not taking. I'm not doing that.
The bet is I can take Tajay Spears and lock up the Titans backfield if I should want to, or I can go T-Law and risk it and do exactly what JJ just said and push it. And I watch the guy on the end is probably listening and see if you have any quick correlation to that game. He doesn't. I'm going to gamble, and I'm going to take Tony Pollard. And people are going to say, oh, man, why are you handcuffing Tony Pollard with Tajay Spears? I think it's a good backfield. I think it's a good offense. They're both probably in roles where they could emerge as the efficient monster that we've seen Spears do last year and Pollard in the past, to where I'm willing to put both on a team, especially since I only have 2. That is going to hurt the dude with Jordan Love next year.
But this is one of those drafts where, like, again, I said it earlier, I didn't go wide receiver heavy enough early, and I need to just force the issue. And now I'm just, there's not much correlation in the lineup, like as much as I would want. This is just the way that it goes sometimes, though. I always use it as like a teaching moment for when I'm doing live streams and stuff. Let's see. Get a little bit of that. I'm just trying to get mini stacks at this point.
With Wicks.
Let's do this.
Okay, I like that. You can just imagine it right now. Blake Corum versus James Conner run back in week 17 where both starting quarterbacks are injured, right? They're just both touching
ground
it
and pound,
times.
baby.
Let's go. All right, lock up some T-Law. That feels good. I do not have a lot of T-Law. I'm sub 4% T-Law, and this was one of those teams where I with Thomas and Kirk, I wanted to prioritize getting them, so that was well played.
Yeah, I mean, no, you have that game on lock. That's good.
So what else? What else is on your mind when you're doing these? Anything you've noticed that's starting to shift with the training camps coming up, with kind of news that's not really news out there, or has it just all been par for the course?
It's been mostly par for the course, I'd say. But, again, I think that what's important is like understanding the demographic that ends up entering these and how things can change. Like when we're drafting in May and June, we're drafting with degenerates, and we're drafting with people who are obviously going to be studying this stuff, a lot and understanding correlation and stuff. And I think what we're going to see is not necessarily people drafting quarterbacks early because they don't know what they're doing, but people like me drafting a quarterback earlier because I'm scared that the other people in the draft don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? And like,
you get more randoms in there that may be prone to just not correlating, not being nice, like I like to call it.
Yeah. And it happens all the time. I mean, you see it all the time, and it's frustrating and beyond tilting. And I'd rather, again, lose out on that equity a little bit and that value, for that one round that I'd be reaching, as opposed to missing out on that stack in total, Yep.
What's your philosophy on, I assume you've not done many 3 tight end, 3 quarterback builds. That is one of my rules that I try to stick to steadfast. If I know it's going to be a 3 QB team, like this is probably shaping up to be a 3 QB team, even though I think T-Law is probably top 12.
Yeah.
But taking him in the 11th, I can afford to go 2 other quarterbacks and try to correlate all 3 quarterbacks on a team where I get my quarterback in round 11. But that also means because I took Njoku, I actually don't mind locking down my second tight end sometime in the next 2 or 3 rounds. So my tight end 2 isn't Jelani Woods, you know what I mean? Where I just don't know if there's going to be anything there. Do you have any steadfast rules like that, or have you abided by something like that before?
Yeah, it's mostly just playing what I've already done and playing off of what I've already done, right? Like I get Lamar here. Like I had no intention of getting Jake Ferguson. I just got him past ADP. He was there. I had a stack. And it's, again, this lineup already started as sort of a differentiation off of what we'll probably see in general. And that's another piece, another area where like what if Andrews gets me there and then Jake Ferguson is the guy in week 17 who does it for me? Who knows? But regardless, like, I'm obviously not going to draft another tight end after spending that much equity. Usually if I get an Andrews, I'm just throwing a dart at like a Jonnu Smith or something as my tight end too, and I'm good to go. Right. Mm-hmm. And then same with like Lamar, I get Lamar. There's no chance I'm going to spend equity or anything significant on a QB2. I'm probably looking at like maybe I shouldn't say it out loud. But someone else in the lineup and just trying to correlate that way. Yeah, I mean, like to me at tight end, I think is most interesting because I think there's a line where I'm cool with sticking with 2 when my tight end 2, like if I get like a mid-range tight end, like let's say that I'm starting with Evan Ingram, right? You go from Evan Ingram to like Njoku. If I get one of those guys, I'll stick with 2 if my tight end 2 is like Freiermuth Musgrave, like what, right. Like one of those 2. But then once you get into like the Hunter Henry range and like the Cade Otton range, that's when I get a little bit more nervous and I'll draft 3, even with the Evan Ingram and Njoku type in my lineup.
Yeah, you have to look at it as kind of like you're buying yourself some relief earlier. Like if you're able to get, I don't know what your plan is with quarterback, but if you take another quarterback that's not in the last round, and I'll talk through some quarterback strategy with you once we make our picks here. I'm up in one more. Is this a team you think you'd take Gabe Davis on? I'm not super high on him. I would kind of prefer to wait on my next receiver, but he is. I think it's around past his ADP.
It fits the build so well for you that. Yes, I did that earlier in mine. Actually, you have a pretty similar build as what I did earlier.
Yeah, let me see if there's anything else that's obvious here. You know what?
I actually have a really similar build because I had the Minnesota stuff going on. God, I didn't even like Leggett as a prospect, but I'm taking him.
Hey, you got that
Carolina
that
stuff
double with Carolina. I'm sure this is we know who JJ's second QB might be. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
Got multiple options though. See Aaron Rodgers. What are you thinking here?
I honestly have no idea. I'm not really that high on Kendra Miller. I could reach a little bit and go with a running back here, but I think I might just kind of throw a dart at a guy that I just like because my wide receiver room is weak. And this is running back room is strong because I took Saquon. This is not correlated, but I'm going to go with Jermaine Burton.
Okay. Yeah, I heard the Silva blurb from last week talking about, Kendra may not be nearly as favorable as fantasy gamers want him to be. I mean, I hear people saying he's a league winner, and his words were basically like, he might not push Jamal Williams for the backup role,
Yeah, the problem with Miller is that like from a prospecting standpoint, what I saw from him wasn't that much of a pass catcher, right? And then he was younger though. Like he was the youngest. I think he was the youngest in his club. Maybe no, Abanikanda was younger than him last.
They were both right at like 21.2 or something like that. Very young.
Yeah. But he was younger, so you're like, okay, maybe he develops that skill a little bit, in the NFL. But generally speaking, when you have the kind of pass catching profile that he had entering the league, they don't become pass catchers very frequently at all. And then on top of that, we know that year one production is really, really predictive, regardless of situation, regardless of like what went down. And we saw, that I just saw Deshaun Watson went 12 pick or went around.
Around before his ADP to a team that has absolutely zero Browns or Dolphins.
Looks like my team with a lack of correlation.
There you go. I was banking that Watson would come back to me just because nailing that Watson and Njoku stack with the Miami bring back was perfect. But you live and you learn. What do you think about me doubling up on Jalen Wright and Devon Achane and Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears? Am I dead? Is there enough diversification there? I
mean, look, that's their backfields that it's intriguing to do it. I haven't done it with Tennessee, but I get it. Yeah, because those two guys, especially Spears, is one of I think he's like top 4 or 5 for me from an exposure standpoint so far. And then Pollard's up there too. Because the thing that's interesting is I actually think that Spears is a better pick straight up than Pollard. Like I'm more intrigued by Spears than Pollard. But when you're doing these drafts, it's like I'm not going to take him over him because I understand variance, number one, right? But then you're also like building a Jag stack, and then like Tony Pollard, is like 5 picks past ADP. You're on the clock, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to just take Tony Pollard right now because what if I don't get Spears? If I pass on Pollard here, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to.
Yeah, and he's not expensive either. I mean, he's like RB 29, so it's like you can usually. There's been numerous times where I've gone, okay, I can click Brian Thomas here because in the next 12 picks, a Tennessee running back will be there. And sometimes that's Spears, but sometimes it's Pollard. So
right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think, and then obviously, like I went on ship chasing, ADP chasing earlier this week, and I was talking to the guys about Jalen Wright being one of my highest rostered players in best ball. I love that pocket. And the pocket that we're kind of in right now. I mean, a lot of the guys have gone like the rookie pocket of like Wright, Vidal. You get Ray Davis in there. It's intriguing because I just think there's more upside than people realize with those players. But with Wright in particular, I think Wright could have some standalone value, even without an injury to Achane and Mostert, where they use him a little bit in garbage time. Where it's not predictable. So from like a managed season long, look at these quarterbacks, man. In these managed season long leagues, it might be a little bit more difficult to take a guy like Jalen Wright, but he still might get some production. And obviously there's the contingent upside if one of those guys ends up getting hurt. It's a backfield you want to invest in, obviously.
I look at Wright as very good Achane insurance, first of all. But I also think that even if you showed me the end season numbers for Jalen Wright and you told me he only had 100 opportunities, so that's like targets, carries, everything. Like I think that's actually pretty realistic. I'm going to take Noah Fant here as my second tight end. But what I was going to say is that there's a chance that in his, let's just say he's only gets 75 opportunities. There's a chance that that's in your lineup 3 times. You know what I mean? Just the way that he's going to score the points. Sure. He could crack your lineup with 6 touches.
Sure.
So it's not like I need the injury for him to crack the lineup. And I think I don't mind handcuffing somebody like Achane knowing how he scores points. So
right. 100%.
All right, let's see. Tyler Algier.
This is where, since my team is so uncorrelated, I get so panicky. Like I might just force it like I don't know about you, but like in this range, I don't feel so strongly about from a player take standpoint.
Dude, no player takes and ADP doesn't matter here. It should all be about what you've already, the foundation that you've already built. Doesn't
and
matter.
I don't know how
weird
doing that. I don't know how weird people are going to be at quarterback, and people are going to be, oh, you just drafted Bryce Young, 2 rounds ahead or almost 2 rounds ahead of ADP. It's like, I don't know how people are going to be. We already saw Will Levis go around before this. Like I don't know. And so the lineup that I have is not the most correlated lineup. I need to have some of that variance. And so I'm just going to force it a little bit and go with them.
Yeah. I don't think after
in this lineup, my God.
What do you got? You got Burton, Davis, Leggett, Corum,
Keon.
Yeah, wow. You stuck up on me, man. You took 5 rookies in the last.
Oh, this isn't a dynasty startup? Damn.
What, 9 rounds? Yeah. Oof. All right. Well, there's a reason we're doing 150 of these drafts, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gotta be something's gotta be different. You cannot have the perfect correlation or perfectly built team. And sometimes that's, I thought about that earlier today when I posted that draft where the guy took the 4 quarterbacks, and I thought, oh man, Underdog's they're going to smoke this draft, right? Because the guy took 4 quarterbacks and then he took 3 old running backs way ahead of their ADP. He went like Kamara, Chubb, and who was the third one? Somebody else. But I'm like, they're just going to smoke this draft. Then he took Tucker Kraft in the 8th, and I go, this one's done.
Yeah.
But then he proceeded to auto draft the rest of the way and unloaded on ADP value because he screwed the room so badly.
Yeah, that everyone's panicking
with those first 8 picks that Like all the quarterbacks were gone in like round 12, round 13.
Right.
So he's getting, I looked at his end team and he probably scooped up like 9 rounds of ADP value because,
That's so funny.
So I'm like, I don't know if they're going to throw this draft out because, I'm sure they have an algorithm to flag drafts that are completely off the rails, but like from like a cumulative 18 round standpoint, it wasn't awful. Like it has no chance because you went 4 quarterbacks to start, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I had that too. There was a dude in one of my drafts where he took Ayuk and Debo at the 1-2 turn. I'm like, okay, that's bold, right? And then
listen, dude, I don't hate that because how many teams are going to do it?
Exactly. Right. Like, exactly. I'm like, okay, there's some strategy going on here. And then some team in the middle of the second took Brock Purdy. And I'm like, man, that sucks. And I had taken Jamar Chase and then I got T in the 4th and I'm feeling good. The team who took Brock took Joe Burrow in the 5th. And I'm like, this is not real. This is not happening right now.
Oh my
God.
He
just screwed. Like it was a troll. It looked like a troll job to me. I thought there was a chance similarly that they would nix the draft and just get rid of it, but they didn't. My team sucks. As a result of like the again, I hate having that strong investment. Yeah, McMillan would have been another rookie that I would have loved in this build. I hate making the investment in these players early and then losing out on like more than one of those wide receivers early and like getting that stack and like getting the game correlation or even team correlation and then missing out on the quarterback. Like I will be fine with reaching around to get that guy just to make sure that I have it. Yeah,
that's making me laugh. The dude that got Ayuk and Debo and then he sees Brock Purdy go off in the second.
I do imagine. I'd be so tilted.
I mean, I'm almost surprised that guy didn't go rogue. You know what I mean? And just start, okay, what team can I mess with here?
Yep.
What team went Waddle, Tyreek? Let me take Tua in the 3rd, just to mess with them. All right, 3 picks left. What construction are you sitting on? Let me look at your team here real quick. You're at a 2-4-7-2, just like
I'm
me
at probably 1 running back, 2 wideouts left for me.
And quarterbacks have gone pretty heavy here. I was going to do a 3 QB build here, but they've gone to the point where, I mean, JJ McCarthy's already gone. So I don't.
Yeah.
This does not feel like a 3rd QB team for me. I don't think. I'm probably just going to tack on an extra running back.
Right. It was probably the best and only good read of my draft was forcing Bryce Young.
I mean,
which things aren't going well whenever that's the good part is Bryce Young.
All right. So I'm going to take this guy just because I think it's probably a pick with a little upside, but also some downside. I'll let you make your pick here, and then we'll talk. I want to ask you another question. It comes to late round running back picks. Ooh, I better lock it in.
Yeah, that was good. I was thinking Allen. I needed to get like a veteran in here. I'll be on. Like this is more of just like a.
I'm telling you, JJ, it's a Nelson Aguilar team.
Oh, it definitely is. I have him in my queue.
Okay,
it's 100% Aguilar.
It's so gross, but you can lock him in round 18. No one will ever touch him. They'll laugh at him.
That's my 18th for sure.
He'll be less than 5% owned in the tournament, and they'll all be on Lamar Jackson teams, which is okay.
100%.
Chig.
All right, I got my next one too.
Do you care about correlation when it comes to these like just random running backs at the end of the draft?
It depends on my build. Like this build, not at all. Like this build, because I'm like I need bodies that have enough upside, but I think even CEH could have some standalone value too. I've been getting Dortch a decent bit, and I already have the Connor Quorum thing going on. But yeah, I mean, like I don't care that much. Like I took Ray Davis where I took him. I had Keon in the lineup. I get a little bit of a Buffalo stack. I get something there. But for the most part, if I can get like you did, like with Foreman, if I know that I have Dolphins, sure, I'll go that direction. But, these rounds are mostly I'm getting players for my team stacks and game stacks to some degree. But if I feel good about where those are at, then I'm just going to get whoever.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm usually sitting here like build some of these super heavy correlated teams, and I'm just staring down the barrel of like, oh man, like right now, I have to be able to correlate my Seattle with a Green Bay player, or my Seattle with a Chicago player, or my Minnesota with the Green Bay player, and I'm like, okay, can I find one to draft? And it's like, I could have taken Roshan Johnson to correlate with the Seattle bring back, but do I think Roshan Johnson has a chance to have some usable weeks? Yes, but I don't think the correlation has a lot of value, because now I'm saying it has to happen in week 17.
Right.
What if Swift misses 3 games and it's in week 5 through 8?
Right.
Do I think Roshan Johnson's good or not? And if I don't, then I don't care what team he's on. Like, I have to talk myself out of that sometimes, because it's like, oh yeah, our minds immediately go to, okay, the injury at running back is more likely to happen at the end of the year, but not always. You know what I mean? You never know. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I'll be honest. If I hadn't got, I get in my head whenever I have a lot of rookies like this. I'm like, I can't just keep drafting rookies, right? Like it's just not a viable thing to do. And so, but Tyrone Tracy is someone I have a ton of, like a ton. And, I would have probably gone that direction had I not, needed just more of like a veteran presence in there.
Justin Fields. JJ, that is my highest rostered player thus far in BBM5.
Fields?
Justin Fields, yep.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I drafted him a ton early. I think probably like 13 of my first 40 drafts I took Justin Fields, and I backed off significantly just because a lot of those were in May or June, and I'm just banking that there's some sort of positive news. I mean, you're a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a positive thing other than like he's on the team, but everything I've heard is he has 0 chance to start. And in anything, they're probably secretly hoping Russell Wilson is not washed, so they do not have to play Justin Fields.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, it does sound like they want Russ to be the dude. And I think that Wilson is like, I've taken Wilson with like Jalen Hurts in a 2 quarterback build.
Okay, I like that.
And it's mostly like I see it, like I do think that he's probably going to start the majority of the season, partially because the Steelers as a team, like they just stay very committed to guys, whether it be coaches or even players. But also they're usually competitive. Like they're usually at least a 500 team, despite schedules. I mean, they always play to their competition regardless under Tomlin. And so I think Russ is actually kind of intriguing. Like if we were guaranteed that he was going to play the full season, I feel like he would be more in that like Geno cluster than where he's going right now. And look, I think that Russ as a fit in the Arthur Smith offense kind of makes a lot of sense, where it's going to be run heavy, a lot of play action, a lot of deep balls, a lot of what we saw peak Russ in Seattle. And I really think the Steelers are trying to replicate like what Tennessee did in 2019. And you look at the similarities, it's kind of there. You have like your quote unquote alpha, with George Pickens. You have a solid run game. You have an athletic quarterback. I know that he's not like the athlete he used to be, but you have a pretty athletic quarterback. Oh, here we go. Everyone needs to notice this. Here we go.
I had the sound effects. We would let it rip. There it is. There it is. I want to need Spence to explain this pick to me. The 18th round Trey Tucker without any, just random. But anyway, continue.
No. I think that the offense could be reasonable with Russ if you make like the connection with what he was able to do in Tennessee.
Yeah, it feels like we'll recap the teams here in a second, then we'll end this puppy. But doesn't it feel like if Kenny Pickett wouldn't have got injured, the Steelers would have been like pulling teeth to get him to go away from Kenny Pickett? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like it's
the loyalty would have been until the end, until they had a clean break in the offseason. They would have never benched him just because. I mean, but he sucked his whole career. You know what I mean? Like
Yes. Yeah, and I feel pretty similarly about the way that they're treating Russ right now. Like, and I think that they've like succumbed to, this is the role that we're playing, both the quarterbacks. Like, this is like Fields knows that that's where he's at, but he can still be the future if Russ, has a crappy 2024.
Good stuff. Well, let's stop the screen share here. We'll recap our teams, and then we'll get you out of here. So, JJ, I'll let you go first. I know you're not. This is not probably the funnest or best team you've drafted. I always say it's harder to draft these teams on live stream and have conversations. Like
it 100% is.
It's great to draft these, but if I win anything, it's probably not going to be one that I drafted on a stream where I'm trying to engage in a conversation, run the, behind the scenes, whatever, and actually focus on my exposure and my correlation and all that kind of stuff. But you went with a 2-5-9-2 build.
Yeah.
Started out hot and then kind of just went off the rails. So talk a little bit about it.
It did go off the rails. I think that the big piece that got screwy for me was in that Jake Ferguson area. I probably should have just gone with like Zach Moss or something and just gone that direction instead. And I was thinking that while it was going on, but it's at least like from a build standpoint, it's definitely differentiated. And I think that like whenever I evaluate these things, I try to say to myself, like, okay, were you first rational with the number of players that you picked at each position and the draft capital spent at each position? Was it rational based on how things went down? Now, tight end was heavy, right? Because I got Mark Andrews and Jake Ferguson, but I think the reaction to that was right. The problem is that there's just not that much correlation going on. Like I have the Philly Dallas game with Saquon and Devontae Smith, and then Ferguson and CD. And then I got the Lamar, Aguilar Andrews stack. There's no Houston bring back, which was it's not the easiest game to stack.
You can't unless you would have taken Dalton Schultz, which would have done the same thing as taking Ferguson. It kind of would have been like, I don't want to do that.
And Dalton Schultz is terrible too. And so like I'm just not gonna force it there. A little bit too much fragility with the rookies. I don't mind going with the Carolina stack as my other team stack. Didn't have a bring back with that. Now that's a situation where should have had the thought to, and I'm not going to blame it on anything. I don't know. It goes back to the Ferguson pick. Like I would have ideally, what I would do in a draft where this is going down is I would have taken Bryce Young with Deontay, with Leggett, run it back with either a McMillan and force that a little bit, or just gotten Kate Otten as my tight end too, and just been done with tight end. Like that's probably the move in hindsight, but at least I can take a step back and be like, this is a differentiated lineup. I rename my BBMs when I'm done doing them so I can just like track them and just see, and then I rate them out of 10. I rate them out of 10 because I'm curious, like as the season goes on, like how I thought about that team in the moment. And this is going to be like a 4 or 5 probably out of 10 if I'm being honest with you.
That is genius because I've never taken advantage of the rename function. I actually just discovered it a couple weeks ago. But
it's fun. You can go back and do it. I mean, what are you like 75 deep? You said you're like halfway there.
Yeah. The problem is I think that the diary of doing it as you're drafting it.
Yeah.
Like it's probably fun to look back at the ones you did in May and say, okay, wait, this was a 5 out of 10. This is looking good now.
Yeah, right.
More like a 7 today,
Right, exactly. It's fun. Like it's fun to see like how, I try to be like fairly critical with the ratings too and stuff. Like I've only given myself like 1-9, right? And like most of them are like 6 to 8s, and this is probably 4 or 5. It's just kind of the way things goes sometimes with these drafts. Like I do these live streams. Some of the streams, like the teams look great on paper, and then some of them they're like this, where you're like, what do you like? It's playable, like this lineup is like it could hypothetically do something, but it's definitely not like the most plus EV thing that I've done.
Yeah, it comes down to, one fundamental thing that I talked about on my first, I do probably every 5 weeks or so, I do just a recorded show where I'll go through all my exposures and stuff like that. The first thing when I first started, I wasn't as tight with roster construction. I did a couple 3 tight end, 3 QB builds. I probably had like 5 or 6 teams where I was either too slim at running back. Like there's no reason unless you were just going RB to only have 4 running backs, because there's so many good values at running back that I can get even if you don't like Kendre Miller, I can get Kendre Miller and Jalen Wright in round 13 and 14. And both of those guys they're a preseason injury away from going in round 8. You know what I mean? And it's not a bad pick to take them early like it might have been in years past. And I look at these teams and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking with like a 3 quarterback, 4 running back, 3 tight end build? Like that team's not going to win. It's off kilter. So I cut that pretty quick. I mean, I think the one good thing you can do when you don't like the players is at least make sure that where you can control what you're doing. Like, okay, you get sniped here. You couldn't build this back when you thought you were going to be able to because someone takes Deshaun Watson 2 rounds before his ADP. Just control what you can control. So, I mean, my team, I went with the 2-6-8-2 build. I needed to go 6 running back because I literally didn't take my RB4 until, Jalen Wright in round 13. And I took 2 players from the same backfield to start. So I'm like, I have very limited outcomes with my running backs. You know what I mean? Like I need the Miami guys to be good. I need the Tennessee guys to be a committee where probably somebody is emerging more often than not in a given week. But I went with the 2-6-8-2. I would have probably preferred to get a better running back 5 where Braylon Allen was, but I ended up taking Noah Fant because I knew I was going to go after Geno Smith. Plus the running backs kind of got eaten up. Like I would have loved to take, I would have taken like Chuba Hubbard because I think he's going to get probably 200 opportunities. Whether he's good or not, he's probably going to get a lot more volume than some of these other guys that are guaranteed, like Elijah Mitchell, Bucky Irving. I mean, like those guys are just straight probably handcuffs. You know what I mean? Right. So I think that was one I would have gone that over Fant because I don't think you guys would have taken Noah Fant. But then I would have had to pass on Geno Smith, which I did want to get Geno Smith here, but that's the price you pay. The quarterbacks went off a little bit faster here. I ended up with only 2 QBs. I like the team. A lot of correlation, a lot of heavy Jacksonville, Tennessee, Cleveland, Miami. I don't love 2 QBs when it's T-Law, Geno Smith. I would have rather, I only correlated 2 week 17 games and 1 week 16 game. I don't think that's what's going to kill this team. It's good. It's not enough if it gets to the playoffs. This is a team, if it won this pod, is probably getting knocked out like in the first round because it just doesn't have enough outs. It's too much on 4 teams. I have 10 players from 4 teams and it just probably not going to break right. So that's my regret. So
I mean, the thing that also screwed you a little bit was the JJ McCarthy earlier than normal pick, which could have been a 3 quarterback build for you if that went that direct. That's what I did earlier with my stream. It was T-Law, JJ McCarthy, and someone else, but to get that 3 quarterback. But again, I'll say it again. The only good thing I did in this draft was reach for Bryce Young because quarterbacks started going off the board. But if that's the best thing you do in a draft, you know that you're in trouble. Yeah.
Last question for you. What do you think about the we call it the custodian QB approach, where you're trying to differentiate yourself by not drafting Jacoby Brissett or Sam Darnold, but you're going completely off the rails with a team like mine and just taking Jameis Winston?
I haven't done it.
It's betting that it's some Rays talked about that, just I'm going to fire a random. And it's not even the quarterbacks you would think have a chance to play. It is, I'm going to fire a random Travis Kelce, George Pickens, Hollywood Brown, Carson Wentz team.
Sure.
And I mean, it would be unique. It 100% would be unique. And I think if you do it on the right kind of build, like just picture a Josh Allen, but then you've also kind of built out 2 other teams and you just randomly go, Carson Wentz and Jameis Winston. And it's like, I don't know.
My thing with that is that with quarterback scoring, like I'm more inclined to go wild at the other positions because with quarterback scoring, it's so tight for the most part, right? Like, like it's hard to massively differentiate yourself at quarterback, even if you get the like Flacco and what he did, down the stretch. Of course, that would be great to differentiate, but like him putting up 25 points, let's say, there's a Flacco call out. Like him putting up 25 points in the playoffs is still a gettable performance, if you will, right? Like it's not like it it differentiates your lineup, sure, but your lineup is still able to match that with whatever you did at quarterback. And so I'm not as inclined to do it when I can get a running back handcuff who could hypothetically give me an RB1 week, in the playoff weeks when I would need it most. So I would understand it more because a lot of people have talked plenty about the solo quarterback builds, right? With just like going with a Josh Allen, with just going a Jalen Hurts. And if you're planning on doing something like that, that would be, like you said, like the one build where, sure, throw that dart with one of those backups and just see if they end up, getting the starting gig towards the end of the year due to injury or whatever, and they're in a good environment.
Well, it's kind of like you're eating your own arm off in a way because you're already making the bet on Josh Allen. Like historically, if you draft Josh Allen, you're expecting him to hit your lineup like a dozen or more times where he's above replacement and probably higher than that. But again, you're trying to predict the timing of it, right? Josh Allen may get injured for 2 games and Josh Allen's going to have a bye week. But you're also betting that, let's say you do the Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Josh Allen, right? You're making 2 bets. One, that those guys have to be playing in week 17 alone, which how happy would you be if you had the one Carson Wentz team in the finals and he was starting and the Chiefs offense has ripped all year? Like you could sell me on how that scenario, Carson Wentz would be in your top 12 projections for the week. Like I could see that. I could see it with Sam Howell. I could see it with Justin Fields. I could see it was maybe somebody like Michael Penix. It's got to be a quarterback where I can sell you that I would be ranking in my top 15 or better for the week. That's not probably most backups. But then how depressing would it be if you got all of that right and then your Josh Allen still smokes him by 10 points? Right. You know what I mean? Right. You're like, okay, I had it right, but Josh Allen still hit my lineup over Carson Wentz and it didn't matter.
That's a big reason for me with it is because we know that those quarterbacks can do that more easily, but also like, I wonder what if you're going to go that route being going with like a super low owned guy, super low exposure guy, super low rostered guy, and you have him for that differentiation in the playoffs. Like what's the difference in percent rostered between Carson Wentz and some third string running back that no one really cares about right now that you might have some conviction towards? I would argue that you might get a bigger edge from a guy who emerges, as an RB1 or as his team's RB1, not necessarily an RB1, but as his team's RB1, and is that guy in the, like Zamir White last year. I know Zamir White was drafted, whatever, but like pretend that he went, and I know that White didn't have like maybe that's a bad example because his ceiling wasn't like that insane down the stretch, but assume that he scored 20 to 25 points in all 3 playoff weeks and he was at 5% rostered versus Carson Wentz less than 1%. I wonder what the payoff is there. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I do because you're leveraging the ownership percentage being low in another spot where it's going to pay off even more. Because what we're not talking about is it's very difficult for that quarterback in a start 1 to outproduce the hammer quarterback that you drafted. Now, if you told me you did Mahomes, Carson Wentz, at least your Wentz is hitting your lineup. It's just a matter, is he going to beat all the other quarterbacks? That actually, just thinking through it a little bit more, that actually may be the way to play it, because then, you're either going to have one or the other. Now, the problem is you're carrying a guaranteed 0, so you still only have one out with that game. But exactly,
I don't know. Thinking about things like that, that's why I brought up Justin Fields, because you know what I'm hoping for, JJ? That Fields is on the kick team in the preseason, and he's so far buried that people stop drafting him.
I mean, it's probably going to happen.
That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping my 30% that I already have translates to like a field of, instead of him being 99% owned, he's going to be like 70% owned because people just stop drafting him in August. You know what I mean?
I wonder, like, how many drafts do you think, like, does Justin Fields get drafted in, do you think? Like is it?
I mean, I think when it all comes when it's all said and done, I mean, Underdog, I don't believe releases any of their ownership stuff until after the fact.
Yeah,
but
I don't think so either.
like, I think a draft like this, I've seen a ton of drafts where he just goes in the last round or two.
Me
I mean,
too.
that's where I've taken all of mine.
Yeah, but that would be my fear too, though, right?
That's the thinking. Is my initial thought on Fields was that I thought he was the best closing line value player out there.
Right.
Meaning, if things over the summer would have gone differently, and it was like this is going to be a true battle, like Russ is, you think of all the shit with Russ that could go bad, the media or his teammates, whatever. So I'm like, I'm just going to bank on the narrative. So in May, I was drafting the hell out of Fields. I'm going to bank on the narrative that it could be Fields over Russ earlier than later. And if it is, by whatever luck, if it was Fields a week before the season, when 15 to 20% of the BBMs are going to get drafted, whenever the late rush is, maybe it's not right before, but point is, if you thought near the end of training camp that it was going to be Fields, he's going where Dak is, you know what I mean? Like he's probably going round 8 through 10.
He'd at least, he'd probably be in Daniel's range, right?
Yeah, there's not a top 12. He's going to go ahead of T-Law and right in the Jordan Love, Joe Burrow range. Like there's not a player that can literally go up 10 rounds if he just wins a job, shy of me projecting a running back to go down, and even a running back to go down. I mean, Alexander Madison's not going to go in round 8 if Zamir White gets hurt, because they're probably going to add 2 more running backs just as shitty as Madison, and he'll go in round 13. You know what I mean? So I'm stopping to take him now for exactly what you said, is how valuable is my Fields against 95% rostered across the tournament versus is Sam Howell more valuable 2% rostered across the tournament? I think it's probably Sam Howell. So
I think too, like thinking through that though too, like if you're looking at like gaining equity, it's hard for running backs to gain equity in general because people hate running backs so much in this format and on this platform. And so like, it's just really, really difficult, not even because it's Alexander Madison and because they'll add other players, but because running backs just are inherently devalued in this format in the way that people are drafting. Right. Like, and the problem is, like, I'm going through the positions, right? At pass catcher, whether you're looking at wide receiver or tight end, you're not going to see a massive, massive bump from those players because talent is involved in them getting their volume more so than at running back, right? Like a running back is like, oh, we're getting rumors that this coach is going to use this running back more, or that this, we saw that this running back got hurt, so the backup is stepping up. Well, if one of the Texans wide receivers gets hurt, we're going to see, if Tank Dell gets hurt, knock on wood, we'll see Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs see an uptick in ADP, sure. But we're talking about like where's Noah Brown going to go? Noah Brown would probably become like, I don't know, 13th rounder. Like it's not going to be like,
I don't even think that. I think it would be too muddy. People would take Noah Brown because he did it last year.
And like
it'd be too muddy for him to go too high. And it's funny because I'm looking right now, guys that did not get drafted in this draft we just completed. Okay.
Yeah.
Dameon Pierce.
Right.
Should be drafted in every league, right? If you're playing,
I could have gone after him with my build as a bring back. Yeah.
I know you could have. Audric Estime didn't get picked. And some of these guys I don't even like.
Yeah.
But Tank Bigsby should probably be drafted until said and otherwise. Right. Will Shipley, Trey Sermon. Like there's plenty of running backs where in 2 weeks, you're going to look back at this draft and go, are you serious? No one drafted Will Shipley? Like he looks like he's going to have standalone work on Philly. Like we don't know that yet, but like those guys are going undrafted. And there's running back 2s here. Like Justice Hill could start the year as the RB2. People think it's Rasheen Ali, but none of the other Baltimore running backs are getting drafted. So it's almost like all of them are going undrafted. But meanwhile, look at some of the names that went in the last round. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. There's a shot he just is cut. You know what I mean?
You better not shout out Nelson Aguilar.
No. I'm not going to shout out Nelson Aguilar because I think he's got a locked-in role for 30 for 400 like he's had, the last 2 or 3 years. But my point is Trey Tucker, Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah.
Cedric Tillman, JJ, that guy was awful last year. I mean, that's a guy. I mean, my point is that we are leaving a lot of meat on the bone, but it's not a lot of meat on the bone. Us in this draft, it's the entire tournament is going to go, wait a second. You only drafted 67 running backs in that draft. And
exactly.
You're like, yeah, but we drafted 105 receivers, and the math doesn't add up. And the funny part is, I ran these numbers the other day. If you draft, and I get it, why you drafted Nelson Aguilar, or why you draft, Juwan Jennings with Brock Purdy or whatever. But if you're drafting a non-correlated receiver after like round 12 or 13, and that's your wide receiver 6 or later, the odds that Nelson Aguilar cracks your lineup this year is probably on average, it's about 1.3 times.
Yeah.
But what happens if it's just shitty luck the week he scores 20? You have 4 other players that score 22.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. But the 1 week just haphazardly did not line up with, because I guarantee you were not looking at your other receiver buys going, wait a second, can I maximize how many shots I'm going to have with Nelson Aguilar because I don't have my wide receiver 5 through 8 on different buys? Nobody does that.
Right.
So it's just, it's funny that we think, oh man, let me draft Darius Slayton at the end, and he might have a game or two. But what are the odds the game or two he has doesn't even hit your lineup? You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true. It really messes with my mind thinking about that.
I think we are, and I don't know what the solution is unless Underdog adds like 2 more rounds. I don't know. You know what I almost kind of want to do, and then I'll let you go. I kind of want to do a draft, and it's hard now because the receivers go so quickly. Could I get away with a draft that's like, I get an Andrews and Lamar, or maybe I wait a little bit and get a different tight end stack. Maybe I get a Dak Ferguson is a good one. Okay.
Yeah.
But then I go 6 receivers, Dak Ferguson, and then I end up with a true 0 RB team where I draft like 9 running backs.
Yeah.
And hopefully it pushes the board a little bit further down, which will look different compared to a lot of these other boards, if that makes sense. Because I don't think enough running backs are getting drafted. We're only drafting on average like 65 running backs. That's not enough for a season. We know it.
Yeah. No, it's true. So, I mean, I think part of the answer too, and it's a lame one kind of, but like it's just not having like insane conviction about 18th round picks.
Nope.
Like, unless you see like an obvious out, but like the Darius Slayton example is a really good example. It's like you see him getting production, and so you're like, yeah, I'll take this guy. He's uncorrelated. I'm just gonna get him. But like realistically, like
that's like the worst, man. The uncorrelated veteran Nelson Aguilar, or like that type of uncorrelated pick at the end. The odds it actually finds its way in your lineup on a team that is good. Keep in mind, it may hit your lineup, and you go, yeah, that team's in 9th place because it's already got 5 injuries. But to continue.
No. I just think it's important to, like in our managed season long leagues, we're always saying it's a lot easier to diversify early and have your conviction late because the investment doesn't really matter that much. But I think it's different from a Bestball standpoint because of the tournament style and because you need that exposure to these other players that you're not going to be able to utilize and get off a waiver wire. They're not going to exist in they just don't even exist in the ecosystem at all. Like once the season starts, and that's the big difference, that you still want to throw these darts at guys that you don't even see the most relevant path to necessarily. But if you can, or maybe don't project a certain way, but you see a path to relevancy to some degree, and you're at least connecting them to your team, and whatnot. But like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of, we could probably talk about this for like hours, but I do think that the overall theme is that people are probably misusing their 17th, 18th round picks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just looking at this draft, one takeaway for me, even though it's not my greatest team, is continue to hit more running backs here. I'm typically the one taking a receiver, just tacking on a stacked receiver or a rookie or something like that. But, I'm looking at our draft and going, I should be taking more Will Shipley because like he's only going to end up being 50% rostered. Whether you think he's good or not, that is higher leverage than taking Khalil Herbert, who's going to be drafted in every single draft. Exactly. And effectively, they're the exact same thing. Yeah. So that's
why I don't mind getting 2 18th round picks with a 17th and 18th round selection. You know what I mean? Yep. Like there's no difference. I don't care, but I'm also going to get that that rostership advantage by doing that.
100%. Well, good stuff, man. Thank you for coming on. We went a little bit longer than I said, but this was fun talking through with you. Check out Becoming a Bestball, bro, on your feed. As always, your normal podcast, the Late Round Pod, with your weekly breakdowns. I assume that's going to start ramping up a little bit more. But your Bestball pod has been awesome this year, kind of documenting your journey. I'm doing the same thing and just really talking through the things that I'm learning, because I've already probably messed up, 10% of the drafts, going, man, if I would have known this after getting all these reps, I would have started to do it differently. But that's what happens, and we'll live to see another year. Hopefully next year we can do it again. For sure, man. I appreciate you having me. Good stuff. Well, we'll sign off for the week. Check out everything on the channel, Destination Devy Radio, Destination Devy on YouTube. Ray's dropping some good stuff weekly on scheme usage. He's really diving into the true media and really trying to figure out from an NFL perspective what we can learn from Dynasty. So check those videos out. All the other content creators on here are great. Check out their work as well. We'll sign off. Thank you.